They soak up a lot of history.
Are we waiting on anybody else to be in person?
We're all here.
I think we're all here.
Everybody's here. Okay, great. Unless there's any objections, I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. I do want to apologize. I had intended on being there in person, but I was traveling, and then sure enough, about 20 minutes ago, I got that text of, oh, hey, we all have COVID. So figured probably not the best thing to be locked in a room with all of you. Call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock on the nose. Is anybody willing to read the land acknowledgement? All righty, I will read it. We'd like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of a rich and diverse group of Native peoples who have called this area home for more than 10,000 years. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the descendants of these Native peoples who are still here today. In doing this, we aim to illuminate the longer history of this land we call home, our relationship to this history, and the heritage of those peoples whose ancestors lived here before the European American immigration that began in the 1800s. Has everybody had a chance to see the agenda? And if so, is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. And then also, did everybody get a chance to take a peek at the meeting minutes from last month? We had a full house there. I think everybody was around. So any edits or concerns with the minutes? Otherwise, if not, then would love a motion to approve the minutes.
I have a couple of minor edits. And I shared these earlier with Nick via email, but I will share them here for the record. In the section of the minutes regarding land acknowledgement, so it's right at the end of the meeting. I don't have the page open in front of me. It reads that Commissioner Kaye said he would likely decline to read the commission's land acknowledgement because he wasn't part of the discussion on the topic. What I would like to add at the end of that sentence are the following words. So, discussion on the topic when the language was adopted by the commission. The other edit I would like to propose in the next sentence. So I'll just read it so that it makes sense. He said that he would like to be a part of a discussion that focuses on the intent of the land acknowledgement so that he can appropriately align with the statement and understand, and this is what I want to edit and change, is understand how the commission intends to apply the meaning of the acknowledgement to its work program. So I did provide these in writing by email to Nick, but those are the couple of edits.
Great, thank you. Any other comments on the meeting minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve, also given the edits that were just shared as well?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Fabulous. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Alrighty. Great. Moving on, looks like our meeting date, I believe the next one should be November 14th at 7 p.m. Does that sound correct, team? Yeah. Okay. Are there any concerns with that date, or anybody know that they're going to be out of town? Okay, hearing nothing. Do we have any citizens in the room? It looks like maybe in the, hi there.
Yes.
Perfect. And do we have someone online as well? Maybe a Christina, I see.
That's me.
That's our
Oh. Excellent. Okay, great. So we have one citizen. Excellent. Do you want to take, we have 3 minutes, if you have some comments that you'd like to share?
I'm just here to listen.
Just here to listen.
Okay, great, thank you for joining us. What was your name?
Leah, I signed in on the sign-in sheet if you need my name, but it's Leah Brenner.
Great, hi Leanne, thanks for joining. Okay, moving on, city council report.
Nothing to report.
Really?
I guess I would ask Phil and Nick if there's anything, recent development that you want to alert folks to.
Sure.
I just say the lakefront property, public engagement process has kicked off. There's a survey online, and it's going to move pretty fast, as I may have mentioned before, because we want to try to get at least, good enough version of the master plan in place before the 2-year funding cycle in the spring, for the state that we would like to apply for. So, it is moving pretty fast, but we're trying to have robust public engagement, along the way. And I think the survey technique was pioneered by the planning commission originally for the ADU ordinance. And it's been very successful in getting a lot of feedback from the community. And we do ask if you're a resident or not. But one of the things that was all interesting for was the climate action survey and the ADU one is a lot of information in the comments. And so I think coming up, I haven't looked at the public participation plan, but it's a good tool when you want to hear from a lot of people rather than just people who show up at public meetings. So just I'll flag that. So that was
I
all.
just give you a quick rundown of some dates. So we are meeting with the Civic Club on Friday. You're meeting with Beach Drive property owners on Monday. And then October 25th, we have a public open house event in the council chambers. I don't remember the hours, sorry, not to forgive me, but I think it's 5 to 7, I think on the 25th. And then this body will be happy to know that the RUE code is through the process of Commerce and SEPA, and we are scheduling that for the 26th with City Council for a public hearing. So we'll be wrapping that up. We are wrapping up tree code updates. Next will be sign code with the City Council. So
That's an old recommendation
Yep.
from the planning.
we're
commission.
checking those boxes off.
And the RUE was a self-initiated proposal from the planning commission. So remember, you do have independent authority.
That's all I got.
Thank you, Phil.
Great, thank you. So old business, last month we had gone through the comprehensive plan update. That was a lot of work. Thank you, SJC Alliance. I know you guys, basically we have a meeting once a month and you have 30 days or whatever to whip out a huge, massive report and then figure out how to translate it to all of us in just 2 hours. So thank you for that. I think now we'll probably move over, give it to you, Christina, if you want to talk about the memorandum and the attachments that we had prepared.
Thanks, Ashton. Shout out to Leland, who were the ones that did all of the work for last month's stuff, and we will see them again next month when we will continue discussing housing. So this month we're pivoting a little bit to kind of a more general understanding of update requirements based on the checklists that were attached to your memo. I also have some additional documents tonight. They came in a little bit late, so I'll mention them in a minute, but basically what I'd like to talk to you tonight is going over kind of a high level, what you should expect to see based on our analysis, doing the Growth Management Act checklist and the PSRC checklist. And then as promised, we're going to be talking about public engagement. So one of the things that I've added tonight to the packet, and for those who are joining virtually,
It's been emailed to them.
Okay, check your inbox. We have a draft public participation plan, and then we have a what was originally going to be a draft implementation report card, but turned into a very lengthy implementation audit that evaluates on a policy by policy basis, kind of what's happened since the 2015 plan was adopted. So it's very thorough and needs to be condensed and summarized into a much shorter report card. But you've got the background information, so we can start to talk about how things have gone and where we need to go next. So that's fun. So those are the new documents. Paper copies here for anyone who didn't grab one already. We're checking. Just a reminder for those who are new to the process and for posterity in the recording, we are talking about Lake Forest Park's 2024 comprehensive plan update. We are now on a 10-year update cycle, and Lake Forest Park is in the 4-county area that is due to update by the end of December next year, 2024. The purpose of the update is to bring Lake Forest Park's comprehensive plan into compliance with other existing plans and policies, including the Growth Management Act as it's recently been amended, King County's updated countywide planning policies, the Puget Sound Regional Council Vision 2050 and multi-county planning policies in that document, and other recent legislation that's been adopted over the last few years. The project needs to rest on meaningful public engagement, and that's what we're going to be talking about for the second part of this presentation. But we're going to go ahead and start with the update needs. And just to give you a little bit of a sense of where we're at right now, so housing needs assessment, I mentioned you'll see more information next month. Work on that continues. We'll be working on the land capacity analysis and a little bit more information. So you'll see David and Andrew back to talk more housing based on the feedback that we got last month as they've continued to refine that. We are working on background research. So the implementation audit is a policy review of everything that was in the comp plan and what has and hasn't been done. So our background research is well underway at this point. Public engagement has begun. I don't know if anybody checked the link in the memo, but we've got the 2024 website up. And if anybody has had a look at it, I would very much welcome your feedback on that. There's a little bit of information about the project schedule, and there's a little bit of information to kind of educate members of the public. So definitely look forward to any thoughts that anybody has on those or on that. We are also in the process of drafting a community survey, and we'll talk a little bit about that in tonight's presentation as well. We're also in the process of pursuing some grant funds right now, which would let us perform some additional work. So stay tuned on that. We're hopeful that we'll be able to perform a deeper level of analysis related to housing in particular, middle housing in particular. And we're also keeping our fingers crossed for some additional climate planning money for resiliency and greenhouse gas emissions reductions. Okay. Let's talk about the memo and the checklists. The checklists are forms that are prepared by the Department of Commerce and the Puget Sound Regional Council. They're formulaic. They apply to everybody who has, in the case of GMA, everybody who's doing any kind of planning under GMA, which is most places in Washington. PSRC applies just to the 4-county area, including King County, where Forest Park is. So that's where these checklists come from, and they provide the basis for most of our policy review. There's a little bit of generic language in the checklist about complying with county policies. We do separately have to go through King County's countywide planning policies to verify and ensure compliance with those. In our review, we ended up noticing that it's really four key focus areas where we're expecting there to be quite a bit of work. Those are the land use element, housing element, capital facilities and utilities element, and transportation element. I'm sure none of this comes as a surprise to anybody here. But the land use element, we're seeing some policy work related to responding to the new growth allocation. That's part of the King County countywide planning policies. King County has promulgated those allocations for housing units by income band and also for jobs. And understanding how Lake Forest Park wants to accommodate those growth allocations will be what we talk about in land use and also with the nexus of housing. There are also some large legislative changes that we talked a little bit about last time related to authorizing duplexes and middle housing types within the city. And then a big piece that we noticed that was missing that we haven't really talked a lot about is policies and criteria related to the siting of essential public facilities, as well as this is new, the organic materials management facility. So there's some new guidance about this that's supposed to support broader access to composting and other kinds of organic materials management stuff.
Are there no environmental update requirements in under land use?
Do you mean with respect to SEPA or with respect to critical areas?
Well, with
ordinances,
respect
or-
to, you know, changes in GMA and PSRC requirements.
There have been some changes to environmental requirements. There have been some, and there's more information in the memo about where some of those changes are. So there have been some changes related to increasing exemptions for certain kinds of infill projects under SEPA, so that they don't have to go through the same rigorous level of environmental.
I'm more
review.
thinking the other way, which is protective of environment as opposed to variances from environmental protection. Are there any, you know, like stream or watershed or climate action associated with tree canopy or anything like that that's environmental
So
in the gaps?
for updating the critical areas regulations, we do need to respond to best available science.
Oh,
We're
okay,
not anticipating that that's gonna be a dramatic change
Right.
compared to where you're at right now.
okay,
And when we do get into climate planning, and depending on whether or not that grant funding becomes available, will be kind of a determinant of whether we can do this now or if this is an implementation item for later, when the funding cycle comes around again. But there are some policy interventions that we can talk about with respect to tree canopy and some of the other environmental characteristics that we should be considering for resiliency in particular. Not necessarily specifically
greenhouse gas.
right.
Yeah,
But you know, when we're talking about vegetation management
Yeah.
or wildfire risk versus tree canopy protection for mitigating drought and some of the
I think
other.
updating the science on the critical areas is a good example, so that's a
Okay.
good one.
Yes,
I just have to report back to the council, so I know I'll get that question. so.
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
so that's something that will be done with the critical areas ordinance update. There's not much, I think at the policy level, that's really going to need to change in the comprehensive plan, based on what we reviewed.
Okay,
And just an update, who's applying for the grant for the environmental piece?
For the climate planning,
Thank you, yeah.
we're putting together some draft application materials to send to Phil.
So you are,
It's a group, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's a
okay.
team effort. We had a meeting with the Climate Action Committee
Yeah,
and
okay.
with Tracy. And we've been doing a bit more research on what's required as part of the
Yeah.
greenhouse gas emissions settlement.
Okay.
So we're still working through that, but we'll be collectively putting together an application,
Okay,
getting it submitted. It's due at the end of the month, so we still have some time, 3 weeks. from
okay.
today.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions on land use before we move on?
Can you just clarify or define what public facilities you mean, like public works or?
So essential public facilities is it's a defined term. It's things that may be what I learned in planning school called locally unwanted land uses, but that are things that are still essential for the functioning of our urban spaces. One of the big ones that I know is being discussed on the east side is the landfill
Transfer station.
Yeah, the transfer station, not the hotel, transfer station, thank you.
Treatment plants.
Oh, yeah.
Sewer treatment
Jails.
plants are big ones,
Jails,
jails and transitional housing.
Any
Sound
sound
transit.
transit facility, any most essential public
Yeah.
facility.
Yeah, so these are
That's
big facilities that can have an impact that's difficult to quantify and grapple with, and instead of allowing jurisdictions to prohibit them, they require reasonable permitting requirements and siting criteria, so you can still control how they get accommodated within your community, but you can't prohibit them outright. Okay, any other questions on land use before we move on? So for housing, and again, this is something that we'll talk a lot more about next month, but big updates here involve an updated land capacity analysis that is in progress. And then some big changes related to new legislation. There are some requirements for considering the location of housing in relation to employment. We're not really envisioning a lot of major land use changes here. I think this is going to be a relatively low bar to clear here, but it's still something that we need to consider when we're doing our policy updates. The role of accessory dwelling units in providing additional density, also in relation to employment locations, and then some new analyses for racially disparate impacts and displacement risk associated with new development. The racially disparate impact analysis informs policies that help undo those impacts. So once you've identified them, then you have to adopt policies that work to undo historic actions that have impacted communities of color and of different races and ethnicities. And then displacement risk, we talked a little bit about last time, that new development may cause especially lower income folks to be displaced as places to develop. So understanding where those risks are and then adopting policies to address those. For capital facilities and utilities elements, these are going to be an update of inventories of your existing facilities, including capacity, and then revisiting your capital improvement plan to work through any updates to the 20-year and the 6-year CIP, and understanding where new facilities may need to go based on potential changes to the land use patterns and housing density. And then we think that there could be some, this isn't specifically required, but we think there's an opportunity to clarify and establish some policies about budgeting, to clarify how that works and how to address funding shortfalls. And we can provide some information about grant funding sources in there. I think that this will really help with the implementation side of things down the road.
Can I ask, is that the same kind of scope of what you would call a capital facility is what we consider in our planning, or is it broader than that?
No, I think it's in line with our capital improvement plan.
That's what I
Our
was-
our sewer, I think we would be involved with Lake Forest Park Water District,
Right.
as we've been in the past with other
Right.
processes, just to make sure. they
That's
have
all,
the
I just wanted to
capacity.
make sure that it wasn't a different
No, it's the same
definition or
facility.
scope as what we implement on a routine basis, if there was some discrepancy in the definition.
They are, for all intents and purposes, the same. The capital improvement plan is how it's termed in the legislation. So that's-
Great.
that's what it's.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and then also some updates to the transportation element, again, updating the inventory facilities, services, and level of service currently provided for both motorized and non-motorized modes of transportation, updates to forecasting and system needs projections, updated CIP, which is very typical, and then some consideration for transportation demand management policies, which I think are likely to rest on the PRT. That's going to be a big, I think, if you refer this piece, the TDM side of the piece.
Okay, so a couple of things on that. I just want to say, so the bus service is being decreased to Lake Forest Park. And our ridership is down. It was never that high, but we used the 522 bus straight to downtown, and now that that's gone, our ridership is lower here. So, and I don't know how you forecast transportation needs going forward, because I don't think you can assume the old transportation goals. So how are you gonna take that into it? Oh, and last but not least, on BRT, a lot of our community and many council members are pushing for queue jumps with signal light changes instead of the dedicated BRT. And we've been told that that's called bus rapid ride instead. So I want to make sure we don't lock in the dedicated bus lane.
Okay,
Okay,
yeah, and to answer
our
your-
language can be just more general.
Sure,
So
we
that's
can-
all I was flagging.
We
Yeah,
can talk about high capacity transit, which is the PSRC catch-all term, for basically anything.
and does that pick up rapid ride?
I believe it does.
I just don't want us to call ourselves a BIT if there are fewer restrictions that come with bus rapid ride, if that's what we end up getting.
Sure, and I will say, two points, in response are, this is an overall policy document,
Uh-huh,
it's not.
yeah.
It's not a legislative document.
Right.
So there's definitely some flexibility.
It
in
was
interpretation.
wording flexibility that I was
Yeah.
just allergic to.
And then if things do change in the future, there's also an annual amendment process and that can be adjusted as well.
Yeah, I'd rather capture more flexibility, and if we have to amend it down the road, do that.
Yeah. About forecasting, that's something that I will leave up to our sub-consultant partners here and Gears. They've done a lot of work here. They're the transportation experts
I'd
and
be very interested to, I think the council will be interested in that too, because
Yeah.
what we hear from Sound Transit is just, oh, well, what we did before the pandemic is what we're assuming going forward.
things are a little different now. And trying to grapple with all of the
Yes.
forecasting is the $1 million question, I think. That's still something that's, all of the transportation.
Again, I would just want us to be flexible enough so that if there's a decrease pressure and decrease intensity, because people are working more from home and so forth, including Mondays and Fridays.
I mean, that's its own TDM strategy
Yeah.
to get back to this particular. plan,
Yeah,
that's something
I
that
just,
we can
I just want to make
look
sure the wording is general enough to encompass the change.
Well, and I think the other thing that this looks at as well is level of service for automobiles. So you're looking at your intersections and
Oh,
you know,
good.
are those gonna be a critical failure?
Yeah,
And so, yeah, you've got to step back and look at it because there is a different model. of
especially when
How
we,
automobiles are moving.
especially when we decrease our speed limit.
Drive.
Fair
Thank
Pierce
you.
is, sure.
Thank you.
Fair and Pierce is starting their work now, not sure if they will be here in December or in early 2024. We're still figuring out the schedule on that, but they're getting started now, so transportation is gonna be one of the sooner topics.
Yeah, and to the extent you can give them some input that we'd like forward looking as opposed to backward looking. I'm sure they know that, but
Yes, yeah. We will work to make sure that the language is as flexible as possible. We're not locking anybody into anything.
Right.
Specific.
thank you.
Before we move on, are there any questions about the checklist? Anything that anybody wants to dive in to further? Otherwise, we're gonna spend a lot more time.
So, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, when I look through the memo and your summary here is very helpful. It seems like there's a lot of areas. Are all of those areas required to be put in the comprehensive master plan update? Or are they all required to be considered in connection with the comprehensive master plan, but the plan doesn't necessarily need to reflect all of those different elements and studies and data?
So, there are some specific required elements in comprehensive plans. All of those elements are present in our current comprehensive plan, with the exception of the climate element, which we have. So we're not going to be dropping anything, and all of the requirements that are reflected in the checklist are going to be then updated in the elements that we have. Everything in the checklist does have to be It does have to show up unless it's specifically noted as optional.
So then, so this is GMA PSRC checklist, right?
Yeah, there are two, one for GMA.
Right, so what about the state law changes that are being?
Those are largely reflected in the GMA checklist.
Okay,
Some of them are newer than the checklist, so that's incorporated into our work, but isn't specifically called out in the checklist because they haven't. I think they released it in March of this year, and the legislative session ended at the end of April, so it's not current to this session. So that's us understanding commerce guidance and populating it into the work that we're doing.
so how do we track that? So we're tracking them through these checklists right now, but how do we bring those items into?
A lot of it is being done through the use of Commerce's guidance materials. And then it'll be captured when Commerce is reviewing to confirm compliance with those things. So while we're following Commerce's steps, we're documenting that so that when it goes to Commerce, it's a very easy check.
So it's,
But there's not like a step, like Commerce hasn't provided their own document to track all of this year's legislative changes.
the two additional questions, and so is it possible that some of those items will not be addressed in this update?
It's possible that some of the climate requirements will need to be deferred later. So there is some funding available now that we talked about. That funding priority goes to jurisdictions that have the earliest compliance timeframe, which are jurisdictions that are doing 2025. So Lake Forest Park is due, everybody who's due in 2024 has to adopt the climate stuff last, just because it seemed unfair to require compliance for people that were already, so far into their updates. So if there's additional funding that we get to be able to do a more thorough analysis, then we'll do it now. But otherwise it'll be listed as an implementation item for the next round of climate planning funding that becomes available. So that will be the only real change would be whether we need to defer some of the deeper levels of analysis.
Okay. Our compliance date is 2029.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
we heard through the grapevine that there could be dollars left, people not applying, or there are more dollars available than are going to be requested. So we thought we're in the middle of it now. We've got our climate action plan coming from our CAC. We thought now's the time to jump on us if we can compose some extra funds.
Yeah, and it's a really wide range of eligible activities and jurisdictions that may or may not have capacity to put together applications or even to execute the work. So just amongst the clients that SCJ is working with, only a few of our clients are going after the money, even though a bunch of them are eligible. So it's kind of, I think there's some basis for saying that there may be some funding left over in this pool.
Okay, then my final question, then I'll release you from everyone else, okay? So just from a project management perspective, I'm just trying to wrap my head around, the expectations for those of us sitting here. I'm just trying to get a sense of what's the expectation, what's the timeline that we're all, that we're going to have conversations about land use, for example, or housing, for example, and how do we prepare ourselves for, those conversations rather than waiting until prior, a few days prior to the meeting. I'd like to be better prepared for each of these meetings.
Yeah, so I am still finalizing Fair and Pierce's their timeline on when they think they'll be ready to come to planning commission, so I can slot that in. I was waiting until I had a more thorough understanding of the update needs based on the GMA and PSRC checklist before I could start really pinning down the schedule for how I'd like to use these monthly meetings. But I'll send out my proposed schedule so that you all can review the materials in advance going forward of the elements that are currently adopted. Refresh your memory on the implementation audit. We'll take a look at what public engagement results have been, so we can be well prepared to have good high quality discussions.
Awesome. And by December, do you think, or is?
I mean, I should be able to have something before your next meeting.
Okay.
But next meeting is housing. So just. heads
Yeah,
up.
right, right. But
Um,
perhaps we could just like, you know, as you said, you could send a draft to us and
Yeah.
review it and maybe spend 5 minutes.
I'll slip it in there, and if anybody has questions, we can talk about it. If it looks good, then we can just breeze right past it and
Awesome.
spend 2 hours talking about more housing
Yeah.
stuff, incapacity analysis and middle housing and all that good stuff.
Before you move on,
Yes.
under the change where we have to explain how we support and incentivize environmental stewardship on private and public lands, the council has talked routinely but done nothing about conservation easements, especially as we have an aging population and people are trying to figure out what to do with their property. We do have some citizens who have like legacy properties in Lake Forest Park. So I think they are just to flag the concept of using conservation easements, or also some people may want to donate their property to the city. And so at least having the door open to those things, again, with flexibility, not mandate in any way. But those are 2 topics that from in the long run, looking at the future, so 10 years is certainly, you know, within that time frame that council members have talked about before. So just wanted to mention that, because that's kind of the because I do like that idea of environmental stewardship on private and public lands.
Yeah.
But that's a way to meld the 2.
We have some expert level knowledge on that subject in the room here,
Yeah.
a little bit.
I just think if we can include the concept in there specifically, as opposed to just, you know, encouraging our citizens to take care of everything, that would be great.
Okay.
There was a great story on NPR just the other day about Native Americans. It's a project program, but they're encouraging people to donate their land and their property to their cause. I don't know if you all heard this program, but I'm trying to find the link.
Yeah, well, you know, I used to work on that area throughout 4 states. And what I always learned is, once you donate a conservation easement, somehow your property value gets reassessed, so the governments don't lose too much income. But and also it was almost as cheap to buy the whole property as to just buy the conservation easement. It was marginally different. So I always wanted to buy the whole thing. But that's interesting. So I did, a lot of my acquisitions went into tribal ownership. Yeah, so,
Interesting.
yeah, so
I didn't know
very
that.
interesting. Yeah.
Any other comments or questions?
Thank you.
So just to clarify, these are the areas that you felt were lacking in our current comp plan based on the PSRC/Jimmy checklist?
I don't want to say that your current comp plan is lacking. It's very good. There have been a lot of legislative changes that just mean there's stuff that's missing because it didn't exist in 2015 when you guys did your last update. So I just want to make sure that.
No problem, I just want to understand that, yeah, thank you.
This is a short list. These are basically the 4 areas where we see there being a lot more discussion. The other chapters or elements in the comprehensive plan, we think are gonna be pretty light in terms of how much effort it will be to update that, which is, I think, very consistent with what Steve talked to you guys about at the very beginning of the year, based on the notes that I saw, just like a more targeted or surgical update of those elements, and a lot more focus related to housing in particular. And then that's driving a lot of the changes in these capital facilities and utilities. But everything is gonna be revisited, with the exception of the shoreline elements, since that update was so recent, we just didn't see anything in there that needs to be. Public engagement, and I will once again state that I am sad Maddie is not here, because I know she was really looking forward to this conversation, and I am looking forward to receiving emails about this. So you have a draft public participation plan. This is a document that is required by the GMA and kind of follows the outlined, there's some very scanty requirements for what has to be in the public participation plan. So that's kind of what this document is. As a reminder, when we kicked off this meeting, the framework that I described was this kind of 3-bucket approach, some ongoing outreach where we were doing more of our information sharing in a digital platform with some supplemental information available at City Hall. 3 major events that are more than all hands on deck approach, survey, a workshop, and an open house, and then minor events that are going to be us taking advantage of stuff that's happening as it's happening, whether that's a scheduled event, a service organization meeting, popping in with schools, however we can and are able to make that level of engagement happen. So all of that has gotten populated into this draft PPP with some additional information. So in the public participation plan, we started with some objectives, and those are summarized here. The gist is to accomplish these 5 things in what we're doing, informing residents about the update, what is the comprehensive plan, what's the purpose of the update, what are the requirements of the update, how is it happening, when is it happening, and when can people make their voices heard in the process. To create opportunities for collaboration among all of our different parties of interest here, for dialogue and exchange of ideas. So not only one-way communication with informing, but also creating opportunities for dialogue. Including a range of perspectives. So we want to be really intentional about reaching out to people who maybe haven't been adequately engaged previously. We want to make sure that we're talking to everyone in the city. Increase accessibility to the process, so making sure that we're using a variety of methods, a variety of techniques to get as many people comfortable and be able to participate as possible. And then building support amongst residents, city leaders, and peer agencies that will lead to successful implementation long term. So this part of I should have prefaced this part of the presentation. This part of the presentation is more interactive. So I've got a few prompts here. Seeing these objectives, would you add or change anything about our engagement strategy based on your priorities or what you want to see in terms of engagement for this project?
So I just have a concern about the previous slide.
Oh, let's go back.
And I'm sorry, the GMA, in terms of public engagement, does it require that we address the vision? And I know I've mentioned this before, but I've just seen groups of people getting bogged down in redefining the vision, and I just don't want to see us get bogged down in that.
So, no, GMA doesn't require, they don't require a vision statement in particular. A lot of jurisdictions find it really helpful to revisit their jurisdiction. The approach that we're planning to take is not revisiting it whole cloth, but essentially confirming it and making updates as needed.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree with David, and that was part of our earlier discussion with Steve, which is that's part of the framework. We really don't want to say, you know, in a really overt, strong way, should we change our vision?
And we're not planning
So,
to do that. It's our approach. So there are some updates that are going to need to be needed. Are going to need to happen. For example, it references the year 2035. So off the bat, you know, it needs a
Sure.
one revision.
I solicit. I think soliciting that change is good.
But I think in general, just checking in to make sure that it's still using language that we like and that the priorities and values of this community are well reflected.
I like it phrased that way,
Yeah.
as opposed to what changes would you make?
No,
Yeah,
and that's,
so
we're not really intending to open the door
Yeah.
to a wholesale deep dive into the vision. I think everyone here has, or nearly everyone here has already voiced their support that the vision statement still is pretty good at reflecting the force part. But we'll talk about it a little bit later.
On that, I wanted to remind folks, we have that 100-year legacy document or whatever. And that was done quite a while ago, but it's so good and so forward looking, so. Somewhere I'd love to reference that because people don't know about it and I just wanna. And so we have new planning commission members since then too, so I just wanna say, if you haven't ever looked at that. I think it's called the 100-year legacy, isn't it?
Lake Forest Park Legacy 100-year.
Yeah, yeah,
2015 comp plan,
It's-
and it calls it out in there.
thank you.
We
It's
should,
It's linked from the website.
oh, great.
fabulous, thank
Oh,
you.
I didn't, that's a separate page that somebody else developed.
Oh.
I just did the.
Thank you all.
More stuff.
On our city website. With a
That would be
comp plan.
Joanne. Yeah, just to the website, so that it is updated, it's under long range planning in the planning department. Which requires you to drill down too far, and so we have Civic Plus. Providing buttons for the homepage so that you can just, it's right there, that and the lakefront part, so that you don't have to know how to get there, it must be right on top, so.
Great, so forget that comment.
Oh, all right. I was just gonna try and-
But let's keep it in mind, though, I think it's
Yeah.
an important document.
Yeah.
So-
Because it looks 100 years, right, so it's amazing.
So for anyone who's not familiar. So this is the 2024 update website. With a bunch of information about the project, but here on the side bar is the 100-year vision box right there, so. If you haven't already done your homework.
And the maps are great too, actually, so.
Yeah, everything on the
Yeah.
sideboard, on the sidebar is very helpful, context information for this process.
Just want to draw attention to Melissa's got her hand raised, Commissioner Kramer.
Oh, Commissioner Kramer, sorry about that.
You're bad. She's to be like,
She's at the
yeah,
top, at the top.
you- Oh, maybe it's because we're screen sharing, I'm not sure.
She should pop up on.
She
Skype.
should pop up.
She could
She's
be
on
over
mental
here.
leave, she hasn't been
Yeah,
promoted.
but then, okay.
So that may also be why she can't.
Ah, that's probably.
Right, it's gonna take her a minute to.
Yeah, she should be able to talk freely. Are you there?
I am now. Okay,
I think that was the reason she had her.
Oh, yeah.
Did you have any questions on any?
I'm sorry, actually, I think I had my hand up for a while and I don't remember what my original question was.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
That's okay. I did have a question about like the public outreach part, on top of like, social media and website. Is there gonna be like other notices posted about this? I mean, some people just don't, use those forums for like looking for information. I was just thinking about like signage down at Third Place Books and like maybe some of the businesses that are around in the town center might be a good place to post information about that.
Yeah, so the intention is that, and I think we've prepared some print materials already with the postcard. The intention is for there to be hard copy materials that are prepared, but we can also be formalizing some like flyers that get posted regularly.
Or
And
just
when we-
posters
And
that
when we
refer people to the website.
schedule the major events, those will be publicized not only on our existing digital media, but also in print to make sure that they get to as many people as possible. That's one of the goals and objectives of the public parks.
Okay, great.
Could we also incorporate it in a section of the monthly newsletter that goes out?
Yeah, it actually will be. I think we've done that once already. Our next print newsletter comes out the end of this month and it will be there as well.
Great, thanks.
Can I also make a suggestion? I don't know, I'm a mom in the area too, and I get newsletters from the school district, and I know the Climate Action Committee, they actually had the superintendent show up, and there was, they seemed to have a great interest in kind of everything that's a city and wanting to coordinate with what was happening on the city, at the city level. But yeah, they have newsletters that go out all the time to yeah, parents all the time. So I don't know if that's possible to get in touch with the school district.
Certainly reach out.
Okay, yeah, for contacts at the school district. I will say, working with schools and children is one of my favorite parts of the comp plan process. The feedback that we get is incredible. Sometimes it's like, this place isn't a place until we have an IHOP. And sometimes it's like, I want a zip line to school. So, it's like, you get a great grab bag. It's always really heartwarming. It's sometimes extremely funny.
They're such nice people. I'm sure they would, but you know, put a little link or something to the survey at the school.
Yeah.
Newsletters. I'd certainly be happy to help the city.
So I just point out there's 3 PTAs, Brookside, Lake Forest Park and Briarcrest that affect, at Lake Forest Park. So
Okay.
I think if we could just get notices to them and they could put something in their newsletters, that would be an easy, simple thing instead of going through the district.
All right,
Just
I'm gonna
thought.
skip ahead to this. So we also have some audiences identified, and I'm hearing the need to specifically call out the PTAs as part of the list of, yes, I would put them in the end.
Service providers.
They're not too. So PTA is added here. We do intend to work with the schools. I'm not sure if I forgot to list them or if I accidentally deleted them when I was summarizing things. But we do intend to work with schools. I would love to get the names of the PTAs so that I can add them to this list specifically. And then if there are any other service clubs or foundations or other kinds of social organizations that should be listed.
So social organizations, there's the Shoreline Lake Forest Park Senior Center, NUSA, North Human Services Alliance, Shore Lake Arts. I don't think they'll have direct heavy interest, but they may look at specific provisions of the comp plan.
Yeah, there was something to mental health, you know, the check.
Yes,
So there's
exactly.
a big contact for that.
Okay, I got the PTAs, I got NUSA. I'm so sorry, I missed the one
Senior center.
the seniors.
Shoreline Lake Forest Park Senior Center. It's a very active community.
Thank you.
And Shore Lake Arts.
Shore Lake Arts. Yeah.
Was there also
Friends of Third Place Commons,
And also the Civic Club.
Civic Club, yeah,
Lake Forest.
Sheridan Beach Club.
That's why we're here.
We have a lot of groups to
I know
liaise with.
people in this community are so involved and it's very cool. Cause not everybody has, such a committed to residents. Commissioner Alvarez, did you have a comment?
Oh, I think I heard Civic Club. That was what I was gonna mention. The other thing was, I may or may not be recalling this correctly, but I believe the Civic Club had like a holiday bazaar or fest or something last year, that there was a big draw from kids and parents. And so that might be something that, I don't know if one of us would want to volunteer. I realize now that I'm saying it, I'm probably volunteering myself, but to drum up some interest or just kind of talk about what we're doing and maybe catch people that way as well.
Yeah, that's a great note. So one of the action items that will come out of this list is to put together kind of some generic emails that will go out basically asking for like what are our opportunities to come and talk to you or to and join you at your events to talk about this project. So if there are any others that you want to add to the list, and if you have contact information or any information about events, now is the time, or send an email to Phil. So we can-
Well,
Or-
we've got contact information for all the groups that I mentioned, and we just got the newest for the Civic Club, so.
Okay. Right. Very good. Everyone else are on the list is one of the usual suspects, residents that live here, people that own property or businesses in the community, elected and appointed officials, and volunteers that help run all things Lake Forest Park. Non-city service providers, so these are where we get like our special districts like water and utility districts, the fire district, transit providers, etc. We've just talked at length about NGOs, and then all of our kind of our peer agencies at state, regional, tribal, and local level. Fairly confident that this is everyone, but again, if I miss anyone, let me know.
King County Conservation.
Oh, gosh.
They might not comment, but again, that outreach is there. King, is it King County or King
Just King.
Conservation?
King Conservation District.
Thank you, yeah. What about the Forest Park Water Agency?
Oh, yeah.
They
Yes,
will.
They're on there.
They're in there.
Okay.
So there's,
Good. Oh, yes, water and.
yeah, there are two,
Thank you.
water.
Yeah, we have,
Yeah.
What about the King County Housing Authority for the?
Oh, 'cause they own-
Forest Park?
Cause they own, that apartment building. They own, what's it called, Woodland North Apartments on Bothell Way.
Thank you. Right, the next big piece of the public participation plan is this matrix of the engagement methods that we're proposing to use. Potential barriers that we see for those methods and how we plan to address those barriers as we're using these methods. So this really gets at the objectives for access and inclusivity. Feel free to read this and send your feedback. I'm not going to go over it at length. This is essentially to show that we are looking for as many barriers as we can to make sure that we are addressing them as we're putting our different engagement methods together and making sure that we're pairing our engagement methods appropriately to support broad and inclusive outreach.
Just a question real quickly for the city. In terms of its website and its content that it puts out, it meets accessibility standards, right?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah, that's our biggest thing, is making sure that the readers work with
Yeah.
whatever content we get.
Yeah, that was just a thanks.
Question, does the city have specific policies in place around language access for like all materials that the city puts out? I'm just curious, I see that listed as a barrier here in a bunch of places. I know over the last 10 years, the county's gone pretty deep into that area where everything we're producing, we have to secure ways to have it translated. So I'm just curious if that's either for efforts like this or across the board. Does the city have policies around that?
I think there's currently standing policy on that.
No, if we get requests, we address them.
Okay.
But I don't think we have a standing policy, so it hasn't been a big issue to date, but it's kind of a ad hoc if requested. I don't know that we've gotten any requests in the last few years.
No.
I just wonder if with an effort like this, it would be worth thinking about how to resource that so that, you know, some of the groups that do tend to kind of miss out or not get reached, that's not the reason. So might be something to talk about.
Good point.
Translation is pretty common. It can be very expensive. So that's something that we'll need to scope appropriately, but it can be very, very helpful in supporting broader engagement.
Well, they'll have budget savings from not hiring a director, so can use that.
Now it's all going to the
I
police
had to
department.
buy him out.
It's going to the police department. I do think that our courts, system has had experience with that, and that's probably the biggest place where we've had these issues.
Even having a translation of something that points to the website for more info can be really helpful, and that's typically a very inexpensive translation, because we're talking about, you know, a few sentences that say, here's the project, here's the purpose, go here for more info. Some places are using Google Translate, which is not super successful, especially I've gotten feedback specifically about the translation into Chinese is terrible. And when we get into, we're working to make sure that when we're putting language together for all of these materials, that it's as relatively simple, so that it's also easier to translate. So we're at least avoiding some of the issues with jargon, but it can be a little challenging.
I like the idea of a statement that just says, let us know
Yeah,
if you
so-
need any of these materials translated, or something simple like what you were talking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the other thing that we could consider is if we, so depending on the length of the survey, if we needed to offer that in multiple languages, that's another place where, we've seen that pay off. Because.
I think we should make the offer if people need it, but I just really don't think we have high demand, but I think if we make the offer and we get people taking us up on it, then we'll see that there's demand that we maybe didn't anticipate.
I'm surprised.
Do you agree, Bill?
I would say the biggest demand we see at the counter outside of the courts is for Spanish translation.
Yeah.
Staff on, get that for us. But when it comes to the courts, there's a lot of translation that's required
Yeah.
there. You have services you can take ones that are outside, it's telephone services.
Yeah.
Could we turn to PSRC? Is that something that we would have support for, especially if it's related to PMA, that PSRC?
Would they provide those services?
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
Typically not. It would be covered by grants that are, that have been awarded, but typically that, should be outlined in the scope, whether you're gonna be working with translators or interpreters or anything like that. I don't know if it's in the scope for the area. But we could.
I'm thinking that perhaps this is something that we can visit later when we talk about how do we diversify our local population, you know, invite people into the community. One way of doing that would be, you know, that we provide access, you know, in other languages, but maybe that's something we put off on the back burner.
Again, I think
Yeah.
making it clear that there's an opportunity and people need it,
For the-
I think
yeah.
is the way to go right now.
Yeah.
And then we can use that as a test.
The other option that is low cost but requires quite a bit of trust and partnership with your community is finding a liaison to essentially be your advocate to English as a second language community. So they can describe a little bit more about the purpose and help ask people to participate and request that translated material.
One other thought, kind of along those lines, my wife works for the school district and they employ various techniques to reach out to families of different languages, so they have people who can serve those types of roles, and I can tell you they're often not fully employed. They're they do that part-time, so there could be some collaboration with the district to reach out to some of their networks of kind of those liaisons and language folks that are already kind of connected to this community. But we could maybe co-opt some of those relationships, you know, to help with this.
That's a really
To
good.
deal with.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So then we talk through in the PPP, what the activities are that we're proposing to use. I mentioned earlier, the project website is up and running. Did anybody visit it before this meeting?
Gotcha.
Okay,
Is that different than the website?
no, that is,
That is-
That is a second.
yeah, it's on the city website, it's live, it's got a bunch of content about the plan, the schedule, resources that are available, and then kind of like a comp planning 101 section with just some high level information about why does this project have to happen.
We should anticipate there's a lot of people in the community who aren't on the planning commission who worked on previous comprehensive plans. Who will have points of view. So be prepared of the survey that there'll be people who
I remember
in
this
that category.
from the town center. And I
Can you-
welcome the input, yeah.
Can you bring up that website?
Yes,
Okay,
I
please?
can.
Yeah, it just, I looked at it earlier, but I going blank now.
So it looks like this.
Yeah.
So there's the project overview, there's some links in there, some information, what's in the comprehensive plan. Here's even a section about what is a comprehensive plan. And why is it important? This is the same level of information that we provided on the postcard. So these were some of the areas where we foresaw at the very beginning where there would be a lot of conversation. Here is the project schedule that was also previously shared with the community. It needs a little bit of refinement since it's changed a bit. But generally speaking, this is already out in the public. There are links to resources, so invitations to visit Planning Commission and City Council. I know that we'll be scheduling that housing transportation infrastructure workshop event. All of the resources available, and these will be linked live as these documents are finalized. So now we have these in a draft format that we can update. We're still working on these items. We're still finalizing this, but again, as these are finalized, they'll be populated with plans.
So I'm sensitive to the fact that on the lakefront park, we're gonna be heavy loading between now and through the end of January. So I just wanna try to see the housing transportation and infrastructure workshop, that wouldn't be in that time window, would it?
So,
Cause I'm just concerned about community overload.
and that's a very fair point.
Cause
and
we're crunching the schedule for the lakefront park.
Yeah, I think that we can work around it. I would like to have it maybe towards the tail end of that timeframe.
Like the end of January.
Yeah, I think
That's
that at
probably
that point,
okay.
we'll have had some more conversation about housing, we'll have had some more conversation about transportation, it'll be fresh on all of our minds, and I think that that will be a really good time to dig in with more of a work session type event, rather than letting it get a month or two down the road when we've kind of switched gears mentally to some different topics. But I'm flexible.
So Phil, do you remember when were we gonna have the draft master plan public meeting? Workshop, do you know? That's what, is that January, February? For the park, is it February? Anyway, let's just look at that, cause there's a big workshop planned on the draft master plan. For January, February timeframe, so just, I just want you to be sensitive to it, cause I think we could get some. It's gonna be a lot of the same people who wanna come out for both events, I think.
We could, we'll
Just
coordinate to make sure.
Yes,
that
let we just
have
take,
it
I
all
don't have the
separated.
schedule offhand, but there's something in the schedule for the first workshop's the end of this month, but the second one is on the draft is. I
Bring it
forget,
up at the website.
yeah, I forget, anyway,
Yeah, I did see that, That one was scheduled for October 25th.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's more of the, you know, general, what do you think kind of meeting. You know?
Yeah, I don't want it to go too long
I get
without having a community discussion, but whether it happens in January or February, like we'll make sure that we're moving or, you know, scheduling all of the moving pieces.
That's the only time frame I'm concerned with that, so.
So I really like the content that's on this page, right? You know, but what do y'all think about like, what's missing for me is the invite. You know, like a short statement that's saying to the community, you are invited to participate in this planning process.
Yeah, we could have something right up at the top.
In color, a different color.
Yeah.
It's a really good point.
Something,
Yeah.
right, something bold.
The-
And it might be signed by the mayor or the city council or the planning, or all.
The planning commission,
Yeah,
Right now, it's down here.
right, right. But it'd be nice to have it right up in front that we're inviting you to, you know, setting the tone for
Yeah.
really
Yeah, I think-
encouraging the community to be involved.
I think that's good, and if it was like in a box with like some color. With flashing lights.
I love that, David. That's what I was going to mention too, and I don't know how it can relate to or what, but I see that notify me section on the bottom, and there's a call to action where you can text or sign up.
Up front too, maybe.
Yeah, I'm wondering, have many people signed up, or is this unique only to this page, or is that throughout the Lake Forest Park site?
The notify me,
Yeah, the tech, sign up for tech.
This link right here, receive updates, is that gonna be unique to this, or?
yeah, so each project that we have, we use notify me, and it will be specific to this project, so they will only. You have to sign up for each thing you want to get notify me either by email or text. So
Okay,
when you go into it, you select which projects you're interested in and want updates on.
great. And then who would be pushing out those updates? Is it just as you do it on the website, or?
Anything we push out through social media also goes out to those as well. So whether it's Nick or whether it's Joanne, whoever pushes those out, and then usually it's Joanne, takes care of those, notify me.
Every meeting is included.
Yeah, if you sign up for it, you will get it pushed to you.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, I think just like when you're, you know, shopping online, there's about 15 different buttons to push, you know, buy now. I would put, you know, an invitation to stay connected, like I've seen at the top, you can have it at the bottom also, but some people might see it for the first time. And, oh, I just want to make sure I know what's going on. I don't have time to read all this stuff and get to the bottom. So I think that would be good. And I like your comment about making it feel like an invitation.
I like your comment, it's kind of like on the campaign website, it's the donate now.
Yeah.
But it's everywhere.
There's so many that
Yeah, it's the middle, it's the end.
But it's a call to action
Yeah.
Yeah.
immediately, so it's important.
I was gonna ask, just on your resources, there's one that I go to all the time that I feel like is really helpful for this kind of stuff is the MRSC, the Municipal Research Service Center. They just have such good kind of lay person language explanations, like they have a whole breakdown of the new housing legislation in there right now and things like that. So I think just if we're gonna populate it with sort of other resources, I would add that in because it's such a good source.
Okay, yeah, I'm definitely open to having non-city resources available or listed here. Yeah, happy to do that.
I don't know of any good ones,
Yeah, MRSC is the one I would.
Yeah. but which MRSC one?
Which page?
Which, you know, yeah, which.
Yeah, I could find a few
Yeah.
keywords.
Yeah, there,
Several around about housing.
I refer to it all the time and have referred to it in preparing materials for this, just because the way that they summarize information is very nice. The Department of Commerce also has some great resources for some of the new housing legislation and the climate legislation. And we can get those.
that workshop, the housing and transportation workshop, that's the one where all of us ideally should be attending. Is that?
Yes, that, and what's not listed here is also the rollout open house where it'll be the presentation to the public of the culmination of our work. I would also very much appreciate it.
100%.
Yeah, so most of the big nights, we had a calendar, right, that of all these activities, but we could talk about that later.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
no, but it's, yeah,
Right.
yeah. it'll-
So Phil, if you and Nick and Corey could just make sure that we aren't doing 2 in 1 week, that would be good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even want to do them within a couple weeks of each
Yeah,
other.
yeah.
Spread them out a little bit. between the
Thank you.
people out.
Commissioner Kramer?
Yeah, I just had a question about the language in this. Is there a way, I mean, I'm assuming maybe there needs to be like different outreach materials depending on the audience. Because I'm just looking at this and it looks great, but it's like very governmental, I guess. Is there a way of like making that language a little bit friendlier to just the general, community members so that they actually want to read it?
I welcome your suggestions. Yeah, if there's a specific, piece of feedback. Is it the tone? Is it the word?
I think to me, the whole thing feels just very, like very formal and very, governmental. I guess for lack of a better word, I know like when I worked at Seattle Children's and I helped with writing their pamphlets, we would try to write it at like the 5th grade level so that it was friendlier and easier for people to digest. And people just I'm just looking at this and people might turn off if they start reading the language in this. And that was my question. I mean, there might be like other ways to reach out to people. It doesn't have to be all in one form, but yeah.
Okay.
Maybe we could think about that and some of the communications that we send out, not so much here, but the invitation might, the invitation statement at the beginning might help soften this language, but I'm thinking maybe a council, the planning commissioner,
Should be
Kramer.
friendly, not bureaucratic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is so many.
We welcome your blah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, not click here to tell me your opinion, but something more
Yeah.
invitation. Okay, I'll work on this, but Commissioner Kramer, if you have any specific suggestions, feel free to send them my way directly.
Just a thought. I mean, you did it in your presentation, like where you had shown, rather than having lengthy words, you have just kind of like an icon. So for like housing, the bullet points that you have all there, if there'd maybe be a way to make that a little bit more friendly, or just a couple rows of icons, that might make it a little more eye pleasing.
Okay, yeah, we can put some more graphics in here and break it up a little bit.
Graphics are always good.
Yeah.
That's a good.
Did work hard on my presentation so that they weren't just like 20 slides of dry text. So I did that for you guys.
That's what they say, bullets kill. In terms of your audience.
Well, you should see some of the slides that my marketing folks turn out. Like, I thought for sure that they would all be graphic designer folks, but apparently I got a report writer because it was just like paragraphs, pages on the slide.
Microsoft manual writers.
Okay, feel free to review the website and provide feedback. I know that there's a lot of content. I already see this graphic is a little bit low resolution and I need to replace that. Or I need to ask Nick to replace it.
Yeah.
And we'll make some of the other changes that we've discussed as well, but if you want to get your feedback in within like the next week, then we can put together some updates. So.
For now, if you move the involvement and the updates to the front of the project overview or above the project overview, I think that would be a quick and dirty thing to do to just get it, the input emphasized in the short term. You got that?
Yeah, so you, just to clarify, you want like the notify me icon.
That and the
Yes,
part
okay.
that says, we want you to be involved.
Yeah.
and Here's the the meetings.
Got
Those two things, I think if you could just scoot them up in the short term, then while we're making it friendlier. That,
Absolutely.
at least that's up front. I agree, not everybody wants to read on.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Okay, next on the list is social media. So this is, announcements are made as things are scheduled, so there's not, activity right now, but there will be. The survey, we are working on putting some questions together, and I will follow this slide with some survey stuff to talk to you about. Housing, transportation, and infrastructure workshop, we're estimating the timing of that to be early 2024, and then the open house to present the draft plan, we're estimating summer 2024. I'll put some more specific dates in once I've got the rest of our schedule for meetings, topics firmed up a bit. And then other events planned and scheduled as those things are identified. So we'll contact the various organizations that we've talked about tonight and get a list of events that we can hopefully tag on to. Help people organize their own events and submit their results to the city so that we can help reach as broadly as possible with the resources that we have available. And then we'll be meeting with the planning commission and city council basically monthly through the adoption. So it's often. Questions or comments on the activities specifically?
Just a comment, I just worry so much that the city is so short-staffed and that, I just, if there's any way that we could help, I don't know if you guys could think of novel ways that we could help, perhaps Commissioner Cramner and I could look at the website, for example, and we could maybe make some suggestions and kind of help alleviating the, because I know it's easy to throw a lot of the comments, but but all of that takes time. And so if there's any way, if you see you guys can need some help, but certainly let us know. I think most everybody would, we're all here to help.
That's great. And I hope that everyone who's involved in organizations or with specific events might be willing to like bring a flyer or have some talking points or
Can I make a comment on the survey? The lakefront property, all the other surveys we've done have been open and closed, right?
Yeah.
But the lakefront property one is staying open. So I guess we'll have rolling results, but I just want to, I don't know what the right approach is. To me, it seems a little bit burdensome to have an open survey that doesn't ever close.
It's gonna have to close.
Yeah,
We need,
okay,
we
good.
need it solid.
That's what I think
Yeah.
too. So I just wanted to bring it up because I saw that there was an opposite approach. So,
Yeah, it has to be closed because we need to formalize the
Right.
results into, we need it to inform our policy discussions
Okay.
here. We also have to provide a final report to commerce. It's,
thank you.
plus it's hard to keep people excited. Like, there's no sense of urgency if it's like never
Right.
goes.
And then you just get issue of the moment instead of broad overview of what people are looking for.
Yeah, or worse, people put it off forever because like, it's still open, I'll get to it, and then it like filters down the.
Thank you. I think that's a great answer.
Okay. Okay, so survey in more specific, I'm sorry, there's a little map that's coming on. The topics that we are planning to include in the survey are confirming the vision, which is where we'll basically identify the need for any very specific updates just to polish it up for the 2044 timeframe. Not inviting wholesale changes. As we've discussed, the vision is a very good representation currently of the city, and just needs some light refreshing. Understanding Lake Forest Park's values and priorities, specifically with respect to some of the legislative changes and how we're going to be addressing those in the community. So planning for increased density and middle housing building typologies. There's an option here that we could include questions about which of the middle housing types should be allowed. So we're gonna have to allow 6 out of 9, so we can do some testing about what people's preferences are and kind of have an understanding what people accept or think could be appropriate in their neighborhoods. And then understanding some infrastructure gaps and priorities, we'll use this information to build the workshop. So where people think we have capacity, where people think our capacity is more constrained in terms of, this is likely to be primarily transportation, is where I first see the responses going, and then about people's experience in the city, where people feel safest and where they feel least safe, so that we can talk about prioritizing some of that infrastructure stuff.
So Christine, I assume you're gonna have comment boxes, because some of the most insightful stuff we get is that the questions prompt people to give you, more of a narrative of their experience, or, what they're particularly concerned about. So I assume we're gonna have those.
Yeah, and I saw that you guys use SurveyMonkey, which I've used frequently. We have a different but very similar tool called Alchemer. And we also have a version, a survey version called Matchinaire that allows
I just defer to Maddie on that.
Okay.
She took care of that before working with Steve in there, so.
The long story short is we have a variety of options. There will be some like binary and multiple choice questions, or possibly some ranking questions, something where we have more quantitative data to inform our discussions, but there will always be an option for open-ended responses that help contextualize how people are feeling. So that's going to be an option. It may not be for every question. Like, for example, we ask how long people live there. There's probably not a lot.
Right.
As a simplified.
No, but for the substantive ones, if
Yeah.
we make sure there's a comment box. I just noticed in the surveys we've done before, that's been actually valuable.
It's hugely valuable, and we can use like a lot of keyword searching to help like navigate through those. It can be very time consuming to analyze all of that, so depending on the volume.
No, but just collating the comments into,
Yeah.
a summary of like, here's the comments we got, like on ADUs, we got a lot of stuff about people's specific desires, whether they had a disabled adult child, or it was multi-generational housing, or impediments they face when trying to do things. It was just very, those personal observations were very helpful. So you've got it. That's okay. And
Okay.
as I said, Maddie is kind of the pro on this one, but she's not here.
Okay. Yeah, we have Matchinaire available, and that one, the only, I think, real difference is that it offers a geographic component where people can essentially like draw a Google pin, and that we're considering how we might be able to use that, where people can really talk about their specific experience in a specific place, and gonna, I believe, attach long form comments to that. to those communities as well. And I think that that might be interesting. So that's something where I think that this last piece about understanding gaps. And
People are
priorities-
gonna want sidewalks everywhere.
Yeah.
Just tell you. And safer crossings of Bothell Way and Ballinger Way, so.
That's great. And if we have
When
like.
people think about transportation infrastructure here, that's what they think of.
I think it'll be really interesting to see if we just have like endless pins along all of the roads that are like all even in space, or if we've just got like clusters at a few key areas.
True.
Yeah, so I think that this would be one place where that kind of tool might be really useful. So we are exploring whether that is a reasonable option.
So then developing the survey, is this an opportunity or an area where one or two of us can assist you in developing those questions?
I would welcome it. I have some sample questions. Just to prompt discussion, and Maddie had asked specifically to talk about messaging. So this is kind of I guess the tone of questions that we would consider asking. I'm not stuck on any of these questions or how they're constructed or the options, but these are examples just to talk about the kinds of questions that might appear in this survey, and start to understand from you all how you'd like to see the survey constructed. So because of some of the sensitivity around messaging, making sure that we're hitting all of the.
One thing I want to ask about relative to the housing piece of the survey, and I mentioned at a previous meeting that I served on a housing committee back in, I don't know, 2007 or something for the city of Berlin. And what was really helpful there was to demystify terminology with photos, right? So when people just hear certain things like triplex, duplex, they just react, viscerally if they don't like that, because they have something in their heads about what that means. And the fact is, they're not actually, there's not this one kind of, duplex or triplex or four pack or call it what you will. So if we could have some, photos of like different types of like, here are some examples of, this category, that middle housing category, for example, so that people can get their eyes on it, because that really helps people to see that you can have, you can have beautiful multifamily homes. You can also have hideous ones. We all know that's true. You can also have hideous single family homes, and people tend to forget that. So I think that's really helpful if we're trying to get meaningful impact on housing, if we can build in some, photo examples, and not just one of each type, but like say 3 or 4 photos, preferably local or from the region, maybe even some from our town here. So
Yeah,
because I found it really helpful when we went through that. So
if you or anyone else has example photos for these typologies that occur already here in Lake Forest Park, please send them to me, and yes, I will incorporate them into the survey.
So I would separate nature and parks in the first one, because I think they're two different things. Because we have streams, ravines, unbuilt areas, so green spaces, I would say, that aren't parks. So I think separating that would be good. I think for transportation planning, we need to include some break out the elements of transit versus bicycles versus pedestrian safety, pedestrian routes and safety, something like that, because I think what transportation planning is too amorphous in the category. So
Do you like these kinds of questions in general?
yes, but you could have a series of them if you want it, that are kind of lumped together if you want it, however you structure it the best. I'm just saying transportation planning for most of our folks isn't gonna is gonna be too amorphous, and I think we need to get a little more specific. So
That's fair, and there's a lot of transportation stuff happening in Lake Forest Park, just with everything that you have going on. Versus somebody else.
Yeah, and one is gonna be traffic calming also, because cut through traffic is just a huge issue in our community. Speaking as a council member, we get at least a couple of traffic calming issues every month, I'd say. What else, Bill? Is there anything you see there? That's a hot issue that we should break out.
To see how they come together in format of the survey.
Anything about
In my
speed
mind,
limits?
these things around. Speed limits.
Speed limits,
That's
yeah.
a big issue, yeah.
If I have a question about speed limits in here, am I walking into something?
You
that I
might be,
need to know
yes.
about?
Can't be too much.
For a policy level, I don't know.
So to me, neighborhood character and housing diversity are two different things. Because it's exactly your point, which is you can have a housing diversity that fits the neighborhood character. Or a housing, consistency that doesn't fit the neighborhood character, so.
I think the comment, I just want to back up for just a moment and ask ourselves, what's the purpose of this survey? Yes, there's data that we're collecting, but we have a lot of this data already based on other, previous surveys. A survey can also be an educational piece, right? So I like the idea of, this is what it means to be a multi-purpose community where diverse housing exists, actually explaining to people what those terms mean, right? So that they actually know what it is that what questions they're answering. So, so again, what's the purpose of our survey? And what are we trying to, what kind of data are we trying to collect that's unique? And does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the last slide kind of goes, with the last slide that you had up kind of gives us the overview of what we're trying to
Right.
visualize. And I totally agree. And one of the things that I think would be important to solicit from the survey is how residents see, given the challenges that we have with growth and the changes that we're seeing in Lake Forest Park, legislative changes and so on. How do you see changing, addressing the growth issues that we have facing the city? Because
That's
some
a good
people
question.
don't even know we have this problem. They be asking us why are you
Don't
asking?
change anything.
Don't
Yeah.
say that, but the reality is we have these legislative challenges as the city, financial, challenges, and yeah, I mean, really, how do you see? I mean, that's personally what I would like to see. I don't know if anybody else.
Another
I-
issue to flag would be community needed places, and that's just not just their place commons, but it could also be the library. So I think that is something like just thinking about the candidate forum last night. That is like a really big issue that comes up in our community, is that community get together places. And it also includes things like picnic in the park or battle of the bands, those kind of things. So that was actually there were like 2 questions, I think, to the candidates last night that involved those kinds of things.
One question I would like to ask is like, how do you see yourself being involved in this process? Right? I mean, it may be that
That's
some
a good
people
one.
feel alienated from the process, and then it might be something that would help them feel more comfortable.
Well, you could have our public involvement things and have them check what they think they might do.
Yeah.
We've asked that kind of question before, essentially, like what's the way, the communication method you're most likely to engage with, here are all of the options. And that's really helped narrow some stuff down, right? If nobody is interested in some, then we can just strike them from the list.
There's a core group of people that are very involved, like Forest Park, right? But it'd be nice to expand that.
I would say one point that was made last night is the public meeting on Sound Transit where we had 450 people. Postcards were sent out to every household. So for the big workshop, I don't know if we want to do that. That's expensive.
About $5,000.
It's about $5,000. And so I don't know that that's worth it, you know, because you still maybe get the same people
Mhm.
who were paying attention anyway. But that was an interesting observation that, you know, the time we got 450 people was, you know, when recently.
Mhm.
Now, Town Center had 400 people probably.
Both of those events, people were not happy.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so- and
That's,
That's the drive.
I actually think, Phil, you're right, that it isn't the postcards that's the driver, it's the people don't like what they're seeing. Yeah, so.
And
Well, let's
that's,
put a photo of a 10-story apartment.
Yeah.
On the card.
Yeah.
People will show up.
You have to pay for my therapy.
I don't know that strategy has ever, I've never seen that particular strategy.
I saw it when the legislative agenda was going, because there was something that said, if you didn't have space on your lot, you could add height to it to create the mandated density. And so people actually went to Ballard and found real examples of those and put them in the legislative briefing materials for the cities. And they were, I
yeah.
forget who did that. It was really compelling because it was like a 9-story building, tall, skinny 9-story building. And so that provision didn't stay in.
So we put the picture on the front of the poster and say, should this be us? And then on the back it says, just kidding.
I don't know, I think the idea of I think the idea of desirable, you know, I think you're right that we have to educate people on where the press for housing density is coming and what we have to do. That single family zoning is dead. By the way, just so you know, so like the Sheridan Beach Club is an HOA, and right now those don't have to change their zoning. So if you're in an HOA, I don't know if there are other HOAs in the city.
Yeah.
They,
Very few.
in other words, it's a covenant running with the land, it's a deed restriction. So it isn't a zoning issue, it's a deed restriction. So that's the difference. So the zoning can still say you can put a duplex there or an ADU, but the deed restriction, it's like having a conservation easement. The deed restriction overrides the zone.
And there's still a huge patchwork of deed restrictions in Lake Forest Park, but it's up to the private property owners who benefit from it to enforce that.
Yeah,
So like the 10
exactly.
acres that I live on, you know, and all the houses
Uh-huh.
there, there is a deed restriction on minimum house size and maximum number of
Yes.
structures per unit.
So that is right now binding. I think
If somebody enforces it.
if somebody enforces it, yeah.
But yeah, I think the education piece is helpful, and I think especially on single family homes, I do wonder on kind of the rest of the questions. Like, if we go through the areas of the comp plan where we have stated goals and policies, is it worth a question in each of those main areas, you know, to kind of suss out the priorities and the values a little bit? Rank ordered. I prefer rank ordering. I don't like the, you know, which is important to you, and then they select all and everything's important. You
Everything
don't
is
get-
equally critically.
Exactly, but like rank ordered questions, and especially around the topical areas where we think we have some balancing to do, or some fine tuning to do, or some gaps to fill from the earlier presentation. Getting some actionable insights from the community in those areas.
Would it be helpful for a couple of us to volunteer now and set that up with you, or?
I mean, sure, if, I guess I want to make sure that we're not violating any potential open public meeting stuff.
That possibly could, but.
So
It's a work group,
okay.
We'll be presenting
a
that.
small work group,
Yeah,
you
two.
can't have a quorum.
That may
Okay.
be three.
Yeah, no, that's what I,
Yeah,
up
you
to.
can't have a
three?
quorum, yeah.
3, 6.
3 and 6, okay,
And it keeps it manageable for you.
right.
Um,
I don't know if maybe we should do a call via email. I feel like Maddie is gonna volunteer probably, and who else? would
And David wants
volunteer?
to
I know,
volunteer.
David's gonna volunteer. Who else would volunteer to be on the committee?
Can I volunteer Yane for finding a photo? So
I
a couple of photos of The neighborhood character, no, truly,
I don't wanna leave it like, yeah.
You know, just something different, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm
I
not
like that.
attached, but I
The
will.
email idea too, so that Maddie or others want. to.
Sure.
Yeah, okay,
Okay.
we'll send an email call for volunteers, if more than 3 people volunteer.
You just choose.
You just,
I'll do a lot of, I'll use a random number.
Yes,
generator.
you guys.
Nobody get mad at me. Okay,
Because there'll be plenty of other opportunities for all of us to be involved.
yes, yeah, and when we have a draft survey, we can send it out for review before it goes live. And folks can, workshop it a little bit too. But it sounds like these types of questions are all fairly well received. We've got some additional feedback about specific topics, in addition to the ones that I listed previously. Is there any other information that you all think would be useful in understanding community perceptions as we're going through the update process?
Just a comment, I was one of the lucky few that got selected to fill out the census this past time, and I just have to say that there's fatigue in filling out I don't know if you have a mind to keep it a certain length or just to keep, yeah, also.
the climate action one was very long. though.
Yeah, but I have to say that was
Yeah.
long too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Just,
I would like to keep it to like 20 questions or fewer ideally. There's some flexibility in that, especially if they're like very short questions, but I definitely want to keep it short. I don't want people to give up halfway through the survey because it's taken them forever.
I will throw in a free iPad if a raffle, I will throw a raffle. Truly, yeah, I will throw in an iPad if they do it and, or I don't know.
That's really cool.
$500 or something, I can pick them $500.
Awesome.
Bribery, I like.
or can we,
Yeah,
I guess on the,
Can we do that?
offer a party
raffle, it's a
favor
raffle.
for
Yeah, there's
filling out
a
the prize?
it's a donated item.
I'd be happy to donate,
They have to sign up for the email
City
list.
can buy them and.
what's
forward them.
please tell me what you would like me to donate, and I'll donate something, so think about that.
We'll put some thought to it and,
How about a gift certificate for like a local?
Yeah, it's hard, yeah.
everybody to the local 104.
So
Very
one
cool.
question, I guess then, so David was mentioning, we have a lot of recent kind of data and survey questions, and we mentioned the climate action survey. So in the sake of brevity, to kind of not repeat questions, is there a way to kind of gather what surveys we've had done in the past couple of years and what data we may be able to leverage?
There's
Because
just those two.
is it just those two?
Yeah, so,
And do we have a way to get like what those two what the
there
questions
were
those?
summaries, I think, so I'm sure there's something somewhere from the ADU one, and I agree, I actually think since we have the climate action one, maybe you don't have to do so
We
much
can
on that.
abbreviate that
yeah.
section, yeah.
And we'll have the lakefront property one
Right.
shortly, so that's,
So
a-
that doesn't cover all
No.
parts, does it?
no, just the
Just that
lakefront
one.
park, but to the extent we're doing the lakefront park reference.
It might address needs or.
Yeah, whatever
desires of-
needs, yeah.
Start.
All right. Awesome. Then I have just a fun activity for us for the last 13 minutes, which is to take a look at the vision statement ourselves and think about these questions. What changes have we seen in Lake Forest Park over the last 5 or so years? What do we think we'd like to see over the next 20? And then how well the current vision statement describes Lake Forest Park, considering how the built environment is described, how the community's culture and social fabric are described, and what values are clearly described in the statement, and how maybe those show up as you spend time in your city. So this is the statement currently from the comp plan. There's a lot of really cool stuff, and it's, I mean, for a 2015 statement, forward thinking, even for now. So I definitely agree that there's a lot of great stuff to work with here. And I'm just kind of curious what you all think about how things have gone, since 2015, or in the last few years anyway. And then how you think the vision statement resonates with you.
I love it. I mean, I've always really identified with that comp plan. I really have. It really is what I love about the city.
Purpose of vision is really to call us forward, right? It's, certainly we haven't met all these conditions just yet. There's lots of work to do, and I still think it calls us forward.
Yeah.
Change the date.
What a good planning commission.
Well, address the town center, I'm still working towards the vibrant town center, still, there's still some work to be done there and. The
Do we want a
connections, we're still
specific
working on the
reference to
connections.
climate change? That's the only thing I would say.
So would you change environmental preservation to climate change or?
I don't know.
Climate
I hadn't
change?
really thought about it. Where would it usually integrate it? Yeah.
When I look at it, I think one thing that's missing is we have the reference to natural environment, trees. Trees aren't there. It's kind of in the name of the town, just kind of purpose the founding of the town.
What about something agreed to, like, also with the growth of the experienced in the region and how it affects us locally, something and on to that. My word here.
So you call out streams and you call out streams and green spaces and trees.
I would call out
Specifically.
trees specifically, maybe streams.
So I want to go back to the question that we would ask on the survey. Because it addresses this. It's like, yeah, I don't want to ask a question that has answered the question, what's wrong here? Right? I want the question to be answered, what resonates for you in this vision, this
Yeah.
current vision?
That's a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a thought to the getting into specifics. I mean, we have the natural environment that encompasses so much, and I think it leaves it kind of more open to the reader.
That's
of
true.
what's important in the environment to them. It also it kind of does somewhat address climate change. I mean, there might be something that you could add there. There's not so much specificity in this, so we're only getting the sidewalks and bike lanes, but.
You know, I fear residents might fall into that same trap that we just fell into too, where we started.
Yeah.
So good, where we just started getting really
Yeah.
specific, but really it's just a,
It is
yeah,
very,
so that was a good point from. But we just started.
So Nick, if you could capture that in the notes though, so that, as an action item, that would make sure that the question represents what resonates as
Vision.
versus what's.
yeah.
The macro versus,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I suspect that climate change people.
Will
will
raise it.
enjoy- yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think it will come up.
And you're right, sidewalks will come up again.
I just also want to do a quick time check. Looks like we have about 8 minutes left. I don't know if we have any other new business, but want to keep just a couple minutes reserved for that in case.
Thanks, Ashton. But because if you do read through the document, it does elaborate on all these points to the trees and the name of your forest park, it does elaborate, so.
Climate action could go in the last one. Because it is a regional issue. Just a thought.
Sidewalks is already in here. For the record.
The climate action wasn't required last time, right?
Yeah.
Now it is. And so
Now it
There
is.
might be a
Yeah.
where you want to recognize
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
If that's the only change to make, that and the date.
But let's see if that comes up in the surveys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, then
Well, and we will be phrasing it more along the lines of. How well does this resonate with you, or with it? How well does it describe Lake Forest Park today?
I think that question is a slippery question. Right there, how it's stated right there,
Okay,
right here,
The first one.
yeah. Yeah, because it's
Because
asking you
people
to.
see us under threat, I think, a little bit, yeah.
and I guess my hope would be people would say this and say, oh, it feels like we're on track to this. We haven't gotten there yet, but yeah, this is what I want. This is still what I want.
That's the way I think we want to phrase the question, yeah. Is this still, you know, what resonates as a long-term vision for Lake Forest Park or something like that? Well, anyway, something, you can work together.
Yeah.
And the team.
Yeah,
The team.
all right, my trusty volunteers, team. That brings us to the end of the presentation. If there are any other comments or questions, now, or I'll see you in November. And I can let you guys get back to the rest of your agenda.
I'll say these tables were super helpful.
Is this the implementation? Oh, no, that's. the
Not the audit,
checklist.
no, checklist stuff that you partially kind of went through and said
Yeah.
which things are sort of addressed or not addressed. That I needed something like this to like, get my brain around. So,
Yeah, I'm actually gonna share that with council,
Yes, yeah,
as opposed to like the audit thing, but I think this is a good briefing summary for them and they can just kind of stay. My goal is to keep them up to date so they feel like they know what's going on. So that's what I was gonna share with them.
yeah, the audit is more, where have we been, and the
Right.
checklists are where are we going?
Yeah.
I think they work really well together because it talks a little bit about like, maybe there's some policies that we no longer need.
Yeah, but you don't have a problem with me sharing that with the council members. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, please do, and feel free to share the memo, the email version of the
Oh,
memo
right, the
has
gaps.
links,
Yeah,
to the legislation, if.
That's a
people
good
want, I've
idea.
been really-
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a good idea.
and high level descriptions. so
At this
people kind of-
stage, people are just gonna be like big issue spotting, so it's gonna be broad brush reading, but I want them to feel like they're, this is so big and important. I want them to feel like they're involved all along.
And are welcome to come to these meetings. Since
That's
I-
my job.
Since I know that I don't have that hearing. Anyway, yes, please do share the checklists, share the memo, with the other resources. Point them to the website and
I'll
ask
do that.
them to give it a test drive too.
Yeah, we're meeting Thursday, so it's a good opportunity.
Especially if anybody hasn't really been involved in the planning process previously, having kind of a guinea pig test reader for the website content, would be helpful, and I think would help address, Commissioner Cranmer's comment about accessibility for the website.
Good point.
Can I ask you to give us homework assignments then, so we can help distribute, homework assignments?
So we do have the
Task list or however you want.
the assignment to review the materials for public engagement and get comments within 1 month.
Okay.
For housing, so housing is our next discussion item. I think take a look again at the baseline information that was presented last time. What's coming next is building on that. So just having that fresh in your mind for the November meeting, I think will be helpful in discussion for that. I will put together some additional information, like the schedule for topics for the next several months, to go over more specifically what, I guess to formalize more specifically what we'll be going over at each one. And then I'll try and put some resources to that. So for example, if we want to review an SC article before a meeting, do that.
I've got a housing question that I don't know the answer to, and perhaps you can raise this with our consultant on that. Are we allowed to have, thinking of some looks are compatible and others aren't. Are we allowed to have design guidelines with must-haves and good-to-haves? With the new change in single family zoning?
So you can have design review requirements. There are some new restrictions on design review process.
So this is not a design review process. It's a adjunct to the zoning code
Yeah,
that says, in addition, it has to look like this.
right, and so to verify conformance to that, you'd still have, even if it's just an administrative. you'd still
Oh,
have
okay,
design
that's still
review.
considered, even
Yeah.
though you don't have a design review group.
Right, like it
It's
doesn't
the
necessarily. have
design
to be-
review within the city staff.
Yeah, so there
Yeah,
are some.
Because that's gonna, how far you can go with that is gonna have a lot to do with what our community is gonna be happy with.
Sure, yeah, and so, short answer, yes, you can have those, but, there are some rules about some new rules about kind of what you can regulate. Most of it seems, I think, pretty no brainer, and I feel like, for example, one of the restrictions is you can only regulate the exterior with your design guidelines, which like, so a lot of them.
Oh,
are
right, you
about the
can't
whole-
have minimum floor plans and or things like that, or maximum floor plan.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, you can't say every unit has to be 1,000 square feet or something like that.
Yeah, and if I'm remembering right, there are also some requirements about how that design review process happens in conjunction with your other permitting processes, so that it doesn't unduly slow things down.
Yeah, it has to be an internal review. You can't have outside, you can't have it be like a board or a commission.
Yeah,
There's also something in there about on some of these structures not requiring more for those.
Oh, well, that's okay. Yeah, that one I saw that, remember that, but I do think that if it's the neighborhood character, the look and feel, is, getting, where we've tried to get specific, because Steve has ingrained us with the idea that he doesn't want to have too much discretion.
right,
So-
yeah.
It has to be objective
That's
criteria.
the objective criteria, yeah,
Lori,
yeah,
if you look at the bottom of page 2 of the memo attached to the checklist,
uh-huh,
under 2022 to 2023 legislative session, so like the very last 2 lines.
yeah,
HB 1293 is the one that specifically addresses design review.
okay,
Their emphasis is to make the permitting process more efficient. So that's kind of the heart of that piece. So that's where a lot of rules about what you can regulate and how it has to work with permitting.
I
process.
just want to flag, I think in terms of the neighborhood discussion about how we incorporate density in single family zoning, that give and take is gonna be, I think, pretty important. And how far we can go with that, is gonna be pretty important, so. This just occurred to me in this discussion, so I'm sorry I haven't brought it up before. But I do think it was really your idea of, visuals that triggered my thinking on this. So I just alert everyone to that, because if it looks one way, might be cool. And it should be consistent with the single family requirements, but if it looks a different way, like I can think of a lot of buildings that to me look like 20 years from now, people are gonna wanna tear them down. There are lots of those.
Most of what's on Lake City Way.
Lake City Way, those buildings, like, oh my God, will they stand the test of time? So.
All right. We are at time. Is there a reason why, are you guys incognito? We haven't been able to see you for a while. It's okay, it's not important.
Oh, you hit start video. Somehow got turned
Word.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, there you are.
It was Nick's fault.
Yeah.
It's been dark for a while. Great. So is there any new business? I don't want to lose sight. I know we spent some time last month talking about really addressing the land acknowledgement. I believe Maddie was going to try and incorporate that. Christina, once you send out kind of what the topics are for the upcoming meetings, maybe we can find a good spot to address that in the future. In addition to that, was there any other new business to bring forth? Okay. Reports and announcements. Anything there? Nope. Are there any citizen comments? Was it,
Oh, yeah. I did have one thought, when we're thinking about like, groups to talk to about the survey, I was thinking about like renters and maybe posting the flyer like in the apartment buildings. So I think renters want to be like overlooked.
great,
Yeah.
great, that's a great ad. It was a little bit hard to hear, but I think I heard you say, let's also incorporate renters into the group that we do outreach to.
Yeah, at least put posters or flyers.
That sounds great. Thanks for that.
Yes.
Agenda for next meeting, I think we punt and let Maddie work that out.
Well, if I could make one suggestion for the agenda for the moving forward, if we could have perhaps like a checklist of what's been accomplished and where we're going. Kind of ongoing basis, so that, you know, from a project management perspective, we all know where we're at, know where we've been.
I like checklists. Sounds good. Great. Well, with that, is anyone want to make a motion to adjourn? Guess not. We're gonna stay here.
I motion to adjourn the meeting.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Perfect. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Nope. Everyone's moving. Great. Good to see everyone.
Thanks, Sasha.
Thank you.
Take care.
Leah.
Bye.
Is it a